Hey folks, Robman here, hoping you're having another fine day in paradise. Today we're going to take a look at the top 5 assault rifles being talked about in the Call of Duty community, and break them down to see how they rank in the Season 3 meta following Raven's recent weapon rebalance. We'll check out important stats like raw TTKs, rate of fire, recoil patterns, and more. And I highly recommend you stick around to the end of the video to check out some high IQ gameplay resulting in a clutch win with one of the weapons we're covering today. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. And very quickly, I just wanted to say thanks for stopping by the channel. If you like what you see, please drop a like and hit that subscribe button for more content. This is a new channel, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on what kind of things you'd like to see in the future. Now, let's jump right in. Today we're going to talk about the Cold War AK-47, the AUTOMATON, the STG, the CR56 AMAX, and the XM4. So with that out of the way, let's check out the TTKs. All 5 weapons are within 100 milliseconds of each other, meaning you can't really go wrong with any one of them. That said, the CR56 AMAX steals the show up until 34 meters or so with its TTK value of 760 milliseconds versus 800 for the STG and 830 for the XM4. Past the 34 meter drop off for the AMAX, the STG pulls ahead with the AMAX not far behind. Though as I said earlier, we could throw on a recoil booster or a higher damage ammo type to increase those TTKs for the STG, though we'd have obvious downsides that could really throw the comparison for a loop. But depending on what kind of loadout you're building, they may be options for you. The Cold War AK-47 and XM4 are extremely comparable here, with just a slight edge given to the AK here. The XM4 is arguably easier to use with its faster fire rate and easier recoil, and you don't really give up all that much in terms of raw TTK beyond a small window between 30 and 35 meters. If you're newer to Warzone and are looking at picking up a reasonably competitive, easy to use AR, I'd highly recommend the XM4 here. In a sweaty gunfight, you may lose on the TTK values, but in the large majority of gunfights, the easier recoil and forgiving fire rate's going to save your bacon. The AUTOMATON here, I think, comes up at the bottom of the list. While its ranking changes throughout the damage ranges, it typically is lower on the TTK scale. Now, this isn't to say it's a bad weapon. Remember, we're talking about the top 5 options here circulating in the Warzone community. I just don't see much gain in choosing the AUTOMATON over the XM4 if I were looking for an easy-to-use AR right out of the gate. So let's move on and quickly take a look at the various hitbox damage values. So starting out with the AMAX, we can see it's unique in the bunch in that it has 3 distinct damage ranges. We don't see a third drop-off TTK-wise, so the effect is largely muted, but it can have an effect when dealing with players who aren't fully plated up or are otherwise injured. We can see that the head and neck values for the AMAX take the cake here and is something that should definitely be focused on at ranges below 53 meters. At ranges beyond 53 meters, we can start to see this STG pull away. We can also see that the XM4 and AUTOMATON have significantly lower damage values that are somewhat mitigated by faster firing rates, but we can see here why their TTK values are typically lower across the board. Looking at the damage figures, I'm actually unimpressed with the AK-47 in that there isn't really a compelling reason to use it over an AMAX or an STG here. Beyond the limbs at under 36 meters range, it really doesn't have anything that stands out. And this translates over to the fire rate as well. Very quickly, we can see that the AK and STG have identical fire rates despite the AK's lower damage profile. Now moving over to mobility, this is one area where the AMAX falls down a bit. It's the only Modern Warfare era weapon on this list, and as we know with all MW weapons, they tend to be slower moving than the Cold War and Vanguard alternatives. My take is the mobility stats, when taken in the context of the TTK and damage info that we just saw, the STG really shines here. It's strongly competitive in mobility across the ranges and does have the edge in TTK values at range. In closer gunfights, while the STG may be edged out by the AMAX from a TTK perspective, the importance of mobility is amplified in those close quarter engagements, and in particular, the strafing speed. The fact is, the STG is 4% faster in strafe speed than the AMAX, which is a noticeable improvement. So in close quarter combat situations, the AMAX is going to be slower and harder hitting, while the STG is faster and moderately powerful. The XM4 shines here with maximum mobility, with the AK and AUTOMATON not far behind. Turning to bullet drop, we'll only touch on this as I don't want to spend too much time here. This graph should be taken with a grain of salt in that most, if not all weapons in the AR class, the effective range is basically 100 to maybe 125 meters max. So when you look at the graph at those ranges, we can see some variation across the weapons, but it's so small that I don't think it should play a large factor overall in your decision making. As for these weapons, we can see that the STG and the XM4 are best performing here, with the AMAX clearly showing the greatest bullet drop of the bunch. Now moving to each weapon's recoil plot, I think this is one, if not the most important metric to consider. At the end of the day, you can have a beast of a TTK time for a weapon, but if you can't hit your shots and the gun is flying all over the place, you're dead and your TTK is just a number on a page.
FYI, you're alone, Rob.
Here we have a collection of each weapon firing at the same time in the same location so we can easily compare visual recoil. I'd have to say the STG stands out as having the most visual recoil of the bunch. The others all have a comparable jump to them in my opinion. Now, visual recoil doesn't have any effect on the actual recoil pattern, so it is possible to train your eye to ignore the visual bounce and to keep your eye on where the bullet traces are heading. Let's check out the recoil plots to see if any of the 5 stand out. The AUTOMATON clearly has the cleanest recoil pattern, but the STG isn't far behind despite the larger amount of visual bounce when firing. The XM4 also has a reasonable and linear recoil pattern. The AK isn't bad either, although it does veer to the right and then back to the left, which can be difficult to correct for. Frankly, the AMAX has the worst recoil of the bunch, despite the magnitude not being so bad. Like the AK, the AMAX veers to the left and back to the right in the bullet path, making it somewhat more difficult to use. This kind of recoil really starts to affect accuracy as the targets become farther and farther away. So all in all, this has been a quick run through of the top 5 assault rifles being discussed in the community after the most recent weapon balance by Raven. I think it's pretty clear that the STG is the top long-range meta right now in Warzone. The AMAX is a strong competitor as well if you can handle the recoil and slower movement speeds. I've probably mentioned it already, but I'll say it again. I am a big fan of the AMAX. I like its overall feel, its sound, and I generally find it very rewarding to get kills with. The Cold War AK-47 has been nerfed a bit, and frankly it shows, but thankfully it hasn't been nerfed to the ground. It is still more than viable. It is an enjoyable weapon to use and is something that I'll likely keep a class for. As for the XM4 and AUTOMATON, they are definitely competitive, definitely usable, and definitely something I would recommend. They will be edged out by some of the alternatives if you find yourself in a sweaty situation, but if you're more of a passive player or a casual gamer that's just looking for a few kills and have some fun, definitely something to look at. Well folks, that pretty much ends it for our comparison today, and I wanted to close out by sharing a clutch win using the XM4. You can get a sense of how easy it is to use like an old reliable friend that will never let you down. I've paired it with a well gun equipped for both damage and range. So enjoy the gameplay, and please let me know in the comments below what you think of the comparison results and what you think the top meta is. And if you've liked what you've seen, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Thanks for stopping by, and with that, Rodman out. Cheers.
You're in the top 10, nice job. It's just you and them. Finish it.
Got the target in sight. Got the target in sight.
Get to the new safe zone. Gas is closing in.
I'm off this way.
Victory rests on your shoulders. Finish the mission. Your team has in the top 5. Let's be the last. Gas is moving.
Found a sniper rifle for you.
We're taking fire.
It's just you and them. Finish it.
Mark the destination.
Be advised. Signs of looting in the area.
Gas is moving in. New safe zone highlighted.
Taking fire!
Sure, I'll try. They've spotted us.
Gas is right on your tail.
Windows closing. Get to safety.